When I was 22, I started dating a guy I met through a dating app. His name was Hunter. We went out 4 times over the course of a little more than a month. At first, everything seemed normal. Our first date was a brief coffee meetup, more of a way to see if he seemed normal. Our second date was at a local bar. We had some drinks, felt a nice buzz, and it was generally a pleasant time. The third date was dinner, and that's when I began to question things. I wasn't sure if I really clicked with his personality or if there was something subtly off about him. That date ended with a kiss, the only time we ever kissed. I tried to convince myself that because I let it happen, everything must have been okay. A couple of weeks later, we went on our 4th and final date, again for drinks. But this time, I wasn't as excited. I paid more attention to his quirks and noticed behavior that struck me as odd. Some of his mannerisms gave off antisocial, even unsettling vibes. He drank too much and became uncomfortably touchy, trying to kiss me multiple times. I'm not a fan of public displays of affection, especially in a crowded bar, so I politely turned him down. A few minutes later, I said I was tired and hinted that it was time to leave. He paid the bill, we grabbed our coats, and headed out. As we walked to our cars, he stopped me and bluntly asked if we could go back to his place. I lied and told him I had work the next day and was too tired. Despite that, he kept pushing, insisting that I didn't really have to work. Whether he was drunk or not, it was absurd. I also wasn't comfortable with the idea of him driving drunk. That night, I decided I wouldn't see him again. I went to my car, which was parked across the street, and began driving home cautiously. I wasn't drunk, but I was aware of my surroundings. That's probably why I noticed the same car following me, even after making several turns. At a stoplight, I realized it looked exactly like Hunter's car. I texted him, asking, "Are you following me?" He replied quickly, saying, "Yes, I just want to make sure you get home okay." I called him, but he wouldn't answer. It was strange, and honestly, disturbing. I pulled over, texted him to stop following me, and told him I was fine. His car stopped briefly, presumably to read the message, and then drove off. He didn't respond again until I was already home and in bed. His message said, "I hope I didn't weird you out tonight. Sorry I got so drunk. Next time we should do something more low-key, like dinner at my place." I didn't reply. The next morning, he followed up with, "Oh no, is the vibe dead?" When I still didn't respond, he sent a question mark. I finally replied, saying I had a great time getting to know him but didn't feel like our personalities matched. I also told him I wanted to focus on myself. I hoped he would understand. That's when the angry messages began. The worst one said, "No, I don't understand. You strung me along for 4 dates just to say that. How about you pay me back half of everything I spent on you?" He sent a few more texts, some of which included personal details that I won't repeat, but they were concerning enough that I blocked him. I assumed that would be the end of it, but then came the no-caller ID phone calls, non-stop. I ignored them all, and eventually, they stopped. The next day, I came home from work to find a bouquet of flowers and a card on the front steps. The card was an apology from Hunter, asking for a second chance. That's when I realized he knew where I lived. It didn't come off as romantic, it was disturbing. I sent him a final message telling him never to contact me or come to my house again, or I'd file for a restraining order. I blocked his number so I wouldn't see any more replies. I truly thought it was over. I was wrong. Not long after that, I was home alone one night. My bedroom was in a loft, the highest point in the house. I woke up to unfamiliar sounds, something downstairs. Still half asleep, I tried to focus and then clearly heard a door open. I knew no one was supposed to be home. I immediately thought someone had broken in. I crawled out of bed, slid underneath it, and quietly called 911. I also texted my family to ask if anyone was home. Then I heard noises coming from another upstairs room. My bedroom door opened, and I heard footsteps on the carpeted stairs. Once they reached the top, everything went silent. I couldn't hear any more movement because of the carpeting, but then I heard drawers beside my bed being opened. I held my mouth with both hands to quiet my breathing. My heart was racing. A man muttered something under his breath. It sounded like Hunter's voice. I didn't move. I just hoped my phone wouldn't make any noise. I heard more rummaging. He was going through all my drawers. Then, I felt the bed shift as he sat down. I could see the outline of his shoes through the bed skirt. He stayed there for at least 2 or 3 minutes before getting up and muttering again. I heard the drawers close and his footsteps going back downstairs. I called 911 again, still whispering. I stayed under the bed until I heard the police arrive. I met one of the officers at the front door and explained everything. Another officer arrived, a woman, and they searched the house. All the windows were unlocked. One in the dining room was large enough for someone to crawl through. No one expected anyone to actually do that, especially through the bushes. I gave a full statement and received a report number. When my parents came home the next day, I told them everything. We went to the police station with the report number and shared all the details, including screenshots of his texts, like the one admitting he followed me. They said they'd investigate, but without solid proof he was in the house, it would be difficult. I did manage to get a restraining order, and I was advised never to contact him again or accuse him of anything directly. He never contacted me again, thankfully. But I never felt truly safe in that house again. Even now, I sometimes worry that he might figure out where I live. I was in 6th grade when the next incident happened. It started during the week of Halloween. I stayed after school to help decorate a haunted house for the carnival. I got to hang out with my friends, and we were rewarded with pizza. One of the kids who also stayed late was a boy I'll call Chris. He had always seemed like a funny, easygoing person, and I never felt uncomfortable around him. 2 weeks later, a group of girls approached me at school with excited looks on their faces. They told me I had a secret admirer and that he'd text me that night. I was curious. That night, just as I was about to go to bed, I got a message through Messenger, the only app one used to talk to my parents when home alone. It was from Chris. I had forgotten I added him on Facebook. His message said, "Maya, I need to talk to you." I replied, asking if everything was okay. Then came the long typing bubble, and after what felt like forever, he sent a huge message. He confessed his feelings for me, said he'd been obsessed since Halloween, and explained how he tried to impress me by showing off his soccer skills. He ended by asking if I'd be his girlfriend. I barely even knew him anymore, and reading his message made me cringe. I told him I didn't feel that way and just wanted to be friends. He didn't take it well. He kept asking why, and I kept trying to find polite ways to explain. Eventually, he stopped responding. The next day, everything got worse. His friends kept telling me he wanted to kiss me, even said he would do it whether I agreed or not. That sounded like a threat, so I reported it to my teacher. She told me to stay inside during recess and lunch and run back to the classroom if he got too close. But I wasn't satisfied. I went to the principal. He said he'd take care of it. That gave me a bit of hope. Everyone knew I lived across the street from school, including Chris. One afternoon, shortly after I got home, there was a knock at the door. I peeked through the window and saw someone hiding behind a parked car. It had to be Chris. My mom opened the door and found a note on the ground. It said there was a surprise waiting under my brother's car in the driveway. My mom checked and found nothing. But after that, my brother's car stopped working completely. We never figured out what happened, and he had to sell it. The harassment continued. Chris's friends kept pressuring me to give him a chance. One day, I caught him taking a photo of me while I was walking home. I only noticed because I heard the sound of the camera. Who knows how many pictures he had already taken. I'd wake up every morning to a message from him, saying things like, "Can't wait to see you today," or, "I bet you'll look beautiful." Eventually, I was called into the counselor's office. I thought something would finally be done. Instead, she told me, boys will be boys, and that I should feel flattered. She said it was normal and that I just had to learn to deal with it. At the time, I believed her. But now I realize how wrong that was. I told my mom everything that afternoon. She was furious. Later that week, I had another meeting at school, this time with my mom present. I remember her saying, "What are you waiting for? For something bad to happen to her before you take action?" She demanded to know why nothing had been done. The room went silent. My mom warned them not to ignore it any longer. Accidentally flying into it, I sat up and listened closely. Then it happened again. It sounded like something hitting the glass. It repeated, again and again, a steady series of thuds that quickly started to unnerve me. Finally, I worked up the courage to get out of bed and see what it was. My heart sank when I pulled back the curtain and looked down to find Chris standing there, a handful of rocks in his palm, staring up at my window. Somehow, he had figured out which one was mine. Just as he was about to throw another, he noticed me watching. I could barely make out what he was trying to say, but I didn't stick around to listen. I rushed to check that every window and door was locked. Thankfully, they were. When I got back to my room, I saw 4 messages from Chris. "Why did you leave? I just want to talk. I'm sorry. All I wanted was a kiss. Please forgive me. You are not who I thought you were. Bye." I blocked him after that. Fortunately, I never had another incident with him, though I was forced to see him throughout middle and high school, from 6th grade all the way to senior year. The last I heard about him, he had been arrested, only God knows for what. What still disturbs me the most is that a counselor once told me this behavior was a compliment, that it was a learning experience for me as a girl. I hope that woman no longer works with children, and I hope I never have to see Chris again. I'd prefer to stay as anonymous as possible sharing this. What happened left me with PTSD and emotional scars that haven't faded. I've changed the names and places in the story so there's no way to trace it back to me. I've always been a reclusive person. It started early. Back in school, teachers told my parents I had antisocial tendencies. I was even placed in special 20-minute classes for speech and behavior during elementary school. I never understood why I had to be there while the rest of my class didn't. By middle school, the pressure of social life hit hard. Kids began forming tight-knit friend groups, and that divide only widened through high school. I never had learning disabilities, I just struggled socially. That's gotten better with age, but I'm still an introvert. Still, I've made a few close friends, and I'm grateful for that. But relationships were another challenge. Being socially withdrawn made it tough to connect with girls. To give some context, I lost my virginity at 21. At 23, I had moved out of my parents' house and was working a solid job in my field. I even bought a nice, spacious townhouse back in my hometown. It was the kind of place that would usually impress someone my age. One day while scrolling through Tinder, I matched with a girl I'll call Emily. We met for dinner at a local restaurant. I felt awkward the entire time, worried she was judging me. By the end of the night, I was convinced she'd never want to see me again. But when I got home, she texted saying she really liked me and had fun. I was ecstatic. We went on a few more dates, and soon we became a couple. At first, everything felt amazing. When someone new texts or calls, you get a thrill. You crave that attention. But slowly, her constant messaging started to feel overwhelming. She'd get upset if I didn't respond quickly, and she'd follow up with calls or even question marks. One night while we were on the couch, she insisted we share our phone locations. I had nothing to hide, but I wasn't thrilled. I gave in anyway. A few months in, things took a darker turn. She started demanding to know why I was at Phil's house if I didn't reply right away. One night, I was hanging out with Phil and our friend Mark in his basement. Emily actually showed up at Phil's place. His mom walked her downstairs, and she immediately started yelling at me for being there instead of answering her texts about a winery trip. I tried to calm her down and asked to talk later, but she made a scene and demanded I leave with her. I apologized to my friends and went outside. We argued in the street, and she wanted to come home with me. I refused. We had driven separately, so I told her not to follow me. When I got home, I sent a long message saying I needed space. Should I have done it in person? Probably. But I was honestly scared of how she'd react. Right after, she started blowing up my phone with texts and calls. Then came pounding at the front door and non-stop ringing of the doorbell. My neighbor even came out to ask what was going on. I heard Emily shouting at him, calling me all kinds of things. Thankfully, he calmly asked her to leave. I listened to everything from the other side of the door. That night, I stopped sharing my location with her. Within seconds, she exploded via text, clearly obsessively watching. Every message confirmed I'd made the right choice. Eventually, I blocked her. A week later, I was back at Phil's place, then headed home around 11 p.m. I wasn't tired and felt hungry, so I made some food and sat on the couch browsing for a horror movie. As the microwave beeped, I suddenly heard a click from the dining room. My townhouse had a loop-style layout on the ground floor, kitchen to dining room to living room to den, all divided by a central wall. The door between the den and dining room was usually shut. I muted the TV and listened closely. I clearly heard that door click open. I peeked into the dining room and called out, but got no response. My blood ran cold when I saw the door was ajar. I always kept my doors shut, this one especially. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and called 911. On the phone, I deliberately spoke loudly so that whoever was there would know the police were on their way. I said I believed my ex-girlfriend had broken in and asked for help. The dispatcher told me to wait outside if I could, so I did. Soon, a police car pulled up. I explained the situation and led the officer inside. We checked everything: crawl space, closets, under furniture, even the attic. The place was completely empty. The officer told me to call again if anything happened, which reassured me that he believed I wasn't making it up. I tried to calm down, reheated my food, and went upstairs to lock myself in my room. I texted friends and family about what happened. Part of me wanted to message Emily, but I resisted. I took a melatonin and, surprisingly, fell asleep quickly. Later that night, I woke up, startled. Something felt off. I checked my phone and saw a flood of texts from a random number. It was Emily. She had sent long messages apologizing, begging to talk, repeatedly asking if I was awake, typing "wake up" 8 times. She hadn't called, surprisingly. I replied, saying she was acting crazy and that I wanted nothing more to do with her. Seconds after I hit send, I heard a scream from my bedroom closet. Emily's voice yelled, "No, and then the door burst open. I didn't even have time to think. I jumped from the bed, yanked the bedroom door open, and ran. The door, which I had locked earlier, was now unlocked. I slammed it shut behind me and held it closed as she tried forcing it open. Then I saw a knife poking through, stabbing the wood. In a desperate move, I shouted, "Baby, I love you, stop." The only thing I could think of that might make her pause. It worked. She calmed down. I quietly called 911 again while holding the door. Through the door, I told her I was going through a hard time and still loved her. I said I wanted to get back together. She responded, frantic but calmer, "That's all I wanted to hear. Why couldn't you just be honest?" She asked me to open the door. I stalled, saying I was scared and needed her to drop the knife first. Eventually, she agreed. I told her to toss it across the room so I could hear it hit the floor. I heard the blade clatter against the wall. I opened the door and tackled her. She thrashed and screamed, but I held her down, shouting my address into the phone. To my surprise, police kicked the front door down moments later and stormed in. There were a lot of them. Emily was cuffed quickly, still sobbing uncontrollably. I think the only reason I didn't cry was because I was still in shock. That night changed me. It didn't end there, there was a long legal process to get Emily convicted. I never wanted my name out there or the story traced to me. I've taken every precaution to keep my identity hidden. Emily's now in prison for serious charges. None of this brings me joy. She was someone I thought I loved. Someone who almost killed me. She wasn't well, and I see now how blind I was, so eager to impress her at first, so unaware of the warning signs. This will stay with me forever. But even if anonymously, it feels like some kind of release to finally tell the story.